Today's scholars have unique visions for their careers. Cheryl Not pursues balance between her work as a professor and her childcare needs. Rising scholars seek meaningful mentoring experiences throughout their careers. Sangeeta Bhatia and Jagesh Shah are a dual-career academic couple who both want fulfilling careers. In response to the needs of today's scholars, higher education is changing to recruit, retain, and develop top talent.
Here's the femur, right? And think about, we're talking about allometric scaling.
Cheryl Not received her PhD from Harvard and is an accomplished researcher in biological anthropology.
I work in a research station in Borneo, and when I first came, I was interested in studying actually human reproduction, looking in sort of traditional human populations. But then I decided that there's a really interesting question about what was going on with reproduction in great apes, and I wanted to see if some of the things that we were finding, my advisor was finding out in humans, if those applied to great apes.
Cheryl is also married and has 2 children.
So my husband, Tim Lehman, he is a photographer, and he primarily worked for National Geographic magazine. And he and I actually met here in graduate school. So he got his PhD in the biology department in OEB, and we worked together in the rainforest. And he travels quite a bit in the year, about 4 to 6 months out of the year, I'd say he's gone.
Hey, why do I have 2 forks, Daddy? I don't need 2 forks.
Oops. Somehow we get you 2 forks. Sorry about that. So can you pick up Jessica, or what?
Oh.
What time?
She gets out today at
It's at 5:30, right?
6.
Yeah.
So I'll pick her up.
Okay.
The schedule really is arranged for when he's gone, because when he's home, we have more flexibility. I have to adjust my schedule and my like my teaching, for example, so that on certain days I have to leave earlier to pick them up.
Cheryl has responsibilities beyond research and publishing. She teaches and advises graduate and undergraduate students and runs a research project and a conservation project in Indonesia and directs a lab on campus. This work takes up considerable time, and she's concerned about the number of women with families that fail to reach the tenured ranks. Cheryl says that about 75% of the men from her graduate program have gone on to tenure-track positions, compared with just 25% of the women.
Which is pretty surprising, really. You know, they're just some of the best graduate students in our area in the country, and yet the women really aren't going into tenure-track jobs. And why is that? It's kind of troubling.
Cheryl strives to make an impact in her field and be an excellent parent. But she wonders if this is possible.
If you have kids presumably because you want to have children, and so you want to spend time with them. So it's not just about finding other people who will help take care of them. I mean, that's part of it, but you want to take care of them yourself as well.
Cheryl may need to leave Harvard to get tenure. She'll also have to consider childcare, school districts, her husband's career, and balancing work and family before making any decisions.
It is really about time and how much work can you get done in a certain amount of time, and it's in the pressure that you're under to be able to do it all. I think a lot of junior faculty are sort of high achieving people, and that I think a lot of us also have high standards for ourselves as mothers or as parents. It's challenging then to be the kind of mother as well as the kind of professor you want to be. I mean, something has to change. We have to make some accommodations in order to make it possible to be a mother and be on the faculty. You can see then here, this goes into the pelvic.
More and more university administrators are hearing that child care arrangements are make or break policies for young academics.
Work-life issues in general and childcare in particular is a key driver for employee engagement in major workplaces. We also know that among faculty, many of them have and more women than men have cited childcare difficulties and other dependent care problems as impeding their progress through the tenure track. And many of them have strongly considered leaving Harvard to go elsewhere, either to another institution or into private industry.
Cheryl says that she's never seen a woman with more than one young child granted tenure in her department.
Diversity is not just having women, but having, mothers, and mothers of more than one child. So, is that possible? Can you even be a junior faculty and have a couple kids and then get tenure? Is that possible?
Situations like Cheryl Not's are increasingly common. Higher education leaders continue to explore innovative benefits to assist faculty with children, such as childcare scholarships, research-enabling grants, and professional travel funds.
Mentoring is something very conscious, recognizing that when you become engaged with someone, involved with someone as a teacher, an advisor, you've got a responsibility. And your responsibility is more than just the dates and the requirements. You want to bring out in someone who they are, how they work, and what they can do best.
To have, a senior colleague ask you how you're doing and actually mean it and wait to hear the answer is a kind of profound act of mentorship. I think that goes underappreciated. So much of this was done informally for so long, and so much of it was done between people who had similar backgrounds and similar experiences. So if we think about the U.S. Academy, 75 years ago or something, it was, colleagues, junior and senior, were probably men from similar backgrounds, had similar networks, went to similar schools and these sorts of things. And now you have a situation where that's no longer the case, and I think it makes people have to actively think about mentorship in a different way.
It means that you have to somehow find out who these people are, not making the assumption that you want to turn them into a mirror image of yourself, a carbon copy, a clone. Instead, you want to see how they can be themselves in an effective manner.
How do you even talk to a professor when you try to make a meeting? Is the best way to approach a professor to talk about your interest in what you want to do with them, or is it best to talk about what you think their interest is based on what their research areas are, and how do you bridge the difference?
I have often felt that I didn't know what I could ask for. For example, I might be someone who is somewhat diffident in that way, in the sense that, I have felt awkward even asking senior men in my field for letters of recommendation when I haven't personally written a paper with them. And this is something that comes seamlessly to most other people, and I have found that difficult. I know that a lot of my female colleagues find the same. And it is true that for a lot of the men, young male colleagues, my contemporaries, mentoring appears to happen more seamlessly. They don't seem to have to ask for it quite in the same ways. And I don't know why that is.
Perhaps the low point of mine being a junior faculty was that I had worked hard for months, many months, to get that first big grant. And after a long and hard struggle, I did get that first big grant, and I was elated. And after I found out, a few hours later, I got a call from my chairman to come in, and I thought he was going to pat me on the back for my good work. Instead, he said, "Richard, it's great that you got this grant, but this grant doesn't pay much overhead. It really doesn't help the department. You need to get grants that provide a lot of overhead to be successful." It was the worst day I had as a faculty member.
Mentoring is important for students, for younger faculty, younger colleagues, at the points in which they're undergoing a change. They have to recognize that they are no longer the recipients alone of new knowledge, but that they are now also sharing it and imparting it. And it's at that point that people's outlook and attitudes are uncertain. And I think it's at that point that young colleagues really need help as they move now to the front of a lecture hall, as they figure out how to take part in department meetings and bring new ideas forward.
As a graduate student, I aspire to be a top scientist in a major research institution. I left the academy for a variety of reasons, the first of which is I felt that I wasn't being intellectually challenged any longer. Felt like a very well-trained pair of hands and really wanted to not work from the neck down, but from the neck up, and use the training that I've been given as a scientist, the ability to think critically and analytically, solve problems.
How do you do mentoring? Well, you do it formally and informally. And a lot has been said about that. There's no simple or single way. You can't put that badge on which says mentor, follow me. It doesn't work that way. It's something that you learn through time. It's something that you also consciously develop. Mentoring can be taught. People who've not done it, who've not thought about it, can be helped to think through it in a conscious manner. Not that there is a single formula, a single series of things that everyone must do, but that there are types of issues, types of relationships which you can point to, which you can bring out, and for people to recognize that it's not something out of sight, something they can't achieve, but something that they can indeed learn to do.
The book works. Remember how it used to be? There used to be that you would pull on here, then little footsteps would come out.
Sangeeta Bhatia and Jagesh Shah are both professors in the sciences, part of a growing number of dual-career academic couples. After beginning their careers in California, they had their first child and decided to move back to the Northeast to be closer to family.
I was already tenured, and Jag was just finishing his postdoc. So we were both looking for faculty positions, and I was hoping to move and retain my tenure, and he was hoping to start in a tenure-track position. It's just like any one person making a big life-changing decision, but it's sort of like squared because everything is connected. So we had to think about our family and the financial piece of it, and where we could buy a home, and where we felt we could thrive. For us, it was nice to think that we would be actually at different institutions that were still in the same place, because we could have our own identities. We got married to spend our lives together, and we didn't want to live in separate cities. So we were just going to move, if we could, to Boston.
Eventually, they limited their search to New England. Harvard and MIT were at the top of the list since they had both trained at HST, a joint venture between the two universities.
Well, what was challenging for us was the different stages that we were at, and feeling in our marriage and as a couple, since we trained together in graduate school, we felt, like real equals. And yet, in the outside world, we had staggered our careers.
Sangeeta mentioned her accompanying spouse early in the recruitment process, and that she could not accept a position unless the outcome was favorable for both of them.
I think the things that go well are when you really do feel like you're an independent candidate. When you walk into somebody's office and they have a frank academic conversation with you about what it's like at their place. Certainly that makes you feel like you're part of the process. It's ultimately a human endeavor, so, these other feelings do creep up, kind of like, oh, are they here for me, or are they just giving me a chance because, my wife is a superstar? What you wanted to feel was that this was going to be a welcoming process, that this was going to be a process where they were going to say, oh, great, there's two of you, that's even better.
They were willing to work at separate institutions in the same city. This flexibility gave them more options, but still their recruitment experiences varied widely.
So we had a whole range of offers that we felt like were really exciting, that we were excited about, or we both really felt valued and really could thrive in, all the way to positions where we really felt like one offer was reasonable and the other was just ludicrous. And those are things that we walked away from very quickly.
Because they trained there, they kept in contact with Harvard and MIT, and HST wanted to bring them back.
We had 2 administrators, one on each side, who really championed our cases and understood, we're independent scientists who could bring something to the community that was valuable. So that really made all the difference. Those personal relationships really ended up helping us decide to come.
In the end, they both received desirable offers because they were willing to work at separate institutions. Meanwhile, their home institution presented a counteroffer, but ultimately they decided to move closer to family.
It was sort of this holistic, what is the life that we wanted to have, not just the job, but the life, and I had this vision that we would be close to our families and that the kids would know our parents and that it would be a village, so to speak, and, that being professors was just one part of the lives that we wanted to have.
Nope, nothing new. Yeah. Is it 8 o'clock?
It is 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
The demands of a career in research science still strain the limits of Sangeeta and Jagesh's schedule, and they've had to push back, making careful decisions about which meetings and conferences they can attend in order to spend time with family.
It's not just a dual career, right? It's a life together, and that dual career is part of it, and that when you make these choices about where you want to go and how you want to accommodate other aspects of your life, you really need to take it. It's a whole package.
Finding creative solutions to the challenges created by dual career couples, as well as childcare and mentoring issues, will create a more supportive working environment for faculty members. Developing faculty early in their careers is essential to the continued success of the Academy.